Welcome to the Storyteller's Porch, a cozy podcast featuring real stories with collective impact. Grab your favorite drink and relax with us on the front porch as we join our host and our guest storyteller for another evening of community and hope. Come along with us as we welcome our guest to the porch.
Welcome to the Storyteller's Porch. This is Jill Davis, your host, and I am so beyond delighted to be on the porch today with Heather Wilde. Heather, welcome to the porch.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's such a fun experience, Heather, to have you here. We've been doing the podcast for about two and a half years now, maybe almost 3 years. And everybody I've spoken to has been a friend and somebody I've known for a long time. But you are the first guest we've had that I really don't know a whole lot about you. You found us, and I was so excited to talk to you and just excited to share with our audience what you have in store for today. But before we go there, tell me a little bit about the drink you brought to the porch today.
Well, being that I'm sitting about 1 mile away from the frigid shores of Lake Superior, we woke up with negative 35 below today. Most schools are closed, so I showed up with what I knew to do best, which is still, even in the afternoon, a cup of hot coffee with some Baileys in it.
Oh, Baileys is one of my favorites. That's a great choice. Today on my porch, I actually have iced tea because we are having, for Colorado, a heat wave, and it's 50 degrees here. But a week ago, we were minus 10. So that's Colorado for you. It's so crazy.
We have about 80 degrees between us then.
Yes. So I am glad to be in my place. And I'm really glad that you're here on the phone with us, talking to us today, even though it's very cold there. I used to drink coffee with Baileys when I was married to the military. That was my drink of choice at all of the banquets we had to go to. And I could just have my coffee and my Baileys, and I would make it through those banquets. So I am glad I was that drink. It brought back a lot of fun memories for me. I want to hear a little bit, before we go into your story, Heather, tell me a little bit about, number one, we know where you are in the world. You're in a cold place. Tell me a little bit about where you are in this post-COVID world that we live in. What's your life path at this moment?
Isn't it funny? I'm just like so many other people that had kind of a significant life shift post-COVID. I didn't see it coming. COVID was hard. It was difficult. I was an educator during that. And when I came out the other side, I did end up kind of on a new life path. I didn't expect it. I wasn't planning it. And so I find myself now just a startup blossoming soulpreneur who's just on a little bit bigger of a calling that expands out from what I was already doing as a teacher. But I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a creative, I'm a mom. And so I'm on a new path right now.
Heather, I think what you said is that a lot of us have taken that new path, haven't we? COVID shifted us, and it'll be interesting. My grandfather was alive during the Spanish flu, and he was actually at the Army base in Kansas where that all started back in 1918. And I think about, did that shift his life dramatically? Because I didn't know him. Obviously he died before I was born, long before I was born. Did it shift his life? So I wonder if in 100 years, they're going to realize the shift that COVID did for everybody in our country. And I think in a lot of other countries too, but for sure in the US, we shifted.
Yeah, I think they'll notice those shifts much sooner than 100 years.
Yeah. I watch our kids shift, and seeing my granddaughter, COVID was when she was in second grade, and she's never going to know a world where there's not online schooling. That's going to be part of her path. And it's going to be fun to watch. And that, as we're talking about schools, Heather, is about your story. Before COVID and during COVID, you were an educator. Tell me about the school that you were at and what ages you taught. Tell me about your school experience.
Sure. I am going to be a lifelong teacher, even though I've left the walls of a public school building. I started with an English middle school, high school teaching license, and I'm very passionate about literature and writing and that creative side that's within all of us. And as I progressed in my life and I went through different life experiences, what I did is I started gravitating toward the students that needed the most help. And so now I was middle school, high school. It was a lot of those kiddos that just didn't quite fit into the model, which we have an old model, mind you, for many districts of education. And I saw that they needed something different. And so I started specializing my educational path. I kept getting closer and closer and closer to just helping students that were at risk of not graduating, at risk of being overwhelmed by life's experiences. And so I have been in very, very rural communities where the population of the whole grade was under 24 students.
Wow.
And then my last position that I was in was very, very different, where I think the graduating classes ran around 300. So it was still not super large, but it was definitely a different flavor. And by the end of my career now, I was strictly working with seniors that did not have enough credits to graduate. And thankfully, Wisconsin has a specialized program to try and give them a safety net, to get them a diploma. And so in a lot of ways, I had morphed out of being an English teacher, even though my job was to make sure they had the skill sets in the core areas. But I really was someone who was working on their social emotional skills and life planning and goal setting and problem solving and critical thinking. So I really found myself very at home with that population.
When you say you felt very at home, I'm imagining in my world, because, most districts have that alternative high school. One of my kiddos may have attended one of those alternative high schools. Brilliant kid, but just the structure of school didn't work for him. So was that the type of students you were working with? And why did it make you feel at home?
A lot of the students that I worked with over about the last 11 years, a lot of them just faced generational trauma and socioeconomic situations. Mm-hmm. And so when, our hierarchy of needs, if some of our needs at the lowest level are not met, education and friendships and relationships and growing isn't the strong suit. It isn't what we want to do. And so I did have students that just didn't like school, but I also had students that were homeless or addicts or had parents in prison. They needed someone to see them. That's what they needed. And they needed to not be judged. So my classroom was very much a space of non-judgment. But it was also extremely open and transparent and honest. We didn't tiptoe because everybody came with a lot of baggage. And so we didn't tiptoe around it either. We were there to try and make it better.
So did you get, and I may be sticking my toe into politics here. If I am, I apologize, because this really is a story place. But, politics kind of go with stories. Did you get any pushback from the administration that you were trying to meet their emotional needs as well as their academic needs?
Oh, that's such a great question. That's one of the reasons that I felt at home, going back to your first part, was because I'm such a believer in the value and power of relationships and vulnerability and transparency. And so as a teacher, I always struggled with putting standardized grades above some of the social emotional. My master's was actually character education.
Oh, wow.
So you can see the value that I place on just understanding why we should be good humans. The beautiful thing that happened with my last position that I was there for 5 years was that I had a bunch of students that basically had been a thorn in people's sides for so long. They just wanted someone to take them and put them somewhere. And that's a super horrible story. But the truth is, teachers were tired of dealing with them and behaviors or. And so they were happy to give them to me and to look the other way. And as long as we were having a learning, safe environment, nobody meddled.
That's wonderful.
Right. And it was empowering for me. It was empowering for the students. And we did what we needed to do every single day. And I was an island, and it was truly my dream job when it comes to education. It was fabulous.
I have goosebumps all over thinking about these kids, and I may tear up here, which is all right, part of our porch experience. I just have goosebumps of thinking of these kids who have been shuffled through and through and through and land in your room where you believe in them and give them the support that they need. What a gift these children receive from you. And I know they actually received even a little bit more than you in gifting. And I want to hear about that, because that to me is such a big deal. When we had our pre-porch time and you told me this story, I was just in a puddle. After we talked, I talked to one of my children and I was just in a puddle about it. Anyhow, you tell that story and I'll let my listeners decide if they're going to be in a puddle. I want to hear all about it.
Oh, that's so funny because I was just thinking how we got on this educational path and talking about why I was at home, which is the whole reason we were here anyway. Like it came all full circle about the story of the pillowcases. That's what we're here to talk about, is about my journey of helping students.
Thank you for your emotion. This is why sometimes, so we're going to go down a little other path together. Sometimes I hear people say, teachers, they only work 9 months. They work 6 hours a day. They're off in the summers and they get retirement. Our audience can't see you shaking your head, but we both know that's not true. That's not how teaching works. I grew up with a teacher who is my beloved aunt. And my memories of her in the winter is she's very tiny. She probably had ADHD. She's been gone for a few years. And her curled up in all these bizarre places all night long. We'd have dinner and then she'd go in the living room and she just laid on the floor and graded papers for hours. And she was teaching 5th grade. And that's my thought of what teachers do. It's not necessarily what happens in the classroom. It happens after the classroom and in the types of things that you did for your students. So tell my listeners what we both know, what you did for your students.
Sure. So I went back to teaching after I'd taken a 10-year break to raise my older 2 daughters. And I went to one of those really small districts. So all of a sudden we get to the end of the school year and there's students I'm super close to and I get invited to their graduation parties. And then all of a sudden you have 10 invites. I found myself thinking, well, what can I give them? And I remember back when I graduated in high school, which was, longer ago, I remember some teachers coming to my party and offering a card with a $5 bill back in the 90s, right? And so here I am. I was probably about 2011, 12. And I'm like, well, what can I give these students that has value? Because I couldn't, if I even put a $10 bill in their card, it would mean nothing really in the grand scheme of things. And there's $100 gone. And it really wouldn't have added a full tank of gas for them. And so for some reason, it made me just, again, I like to see people and I like people to feel seen. And so I have grown up with sewing. My mom was a sewer. She, made clothes as a seamstress and she'd make quilts. And so fabric was just a part of my life. And she had gone through a pillowcase phase. When I say phase, it means that my daughters, ended up with a pillowcase for every single holiday. You had the Valentine pillowcase. You had the Black Cat Halloween pillowcase. You had the Mayflower pillowcase. And so we had all these homemade pillowcases that just came in. Your beds look beautiful and they're playful. And I just realized I had that talent myself. People that sew, we have leftover fabric. And that first year I made, let's say, 10 pillowcases and they were affordable. I could make them for under $10. And not only that, but I found how easy it was to personalize them.
And how did you personalize them? That's a great concept.
Yeah, that was the joy on my end, was to figure out, as I am so compassionate and intuitive, I can see kids. I can see what gets them sparked and what sets a light in their eyes. And so I started saying, okay, that kiddo loves sports. So I'm going to get the fabric that matches the sport that he just left a career of. And another kiddo loved NASCAR. And I actually special ordered the logo fabric for him. That was, I went over and beyond. And let me tell you, the beauty of them opening it. But the kiddo with the NASCAR fabric came back to me about 5 years later and said, it got a hole in it. Can you make me another? Right? And I just sat there and I've heard such beautiful stories, but it was about the textures and the colors and the combinations. And it was a joy to collect fabric. It was like a hunt. It was like a scavenger hunt for me to find it at rummage sales and places where I could get good quality fabric for even a little bit cheaper. So it became so personal and it became a legacy. And when I'd be at a school for multiple years, all of a sudden the kiddos moving up would be like, oh, I get my pillowcase this year.
Isn't it amazing how these kids grab hold of traditions when they feel loved?
Absolutely. And it was personal. And on a couple of the years, I found myself making maybe 35 pillowcases. And I would go off to women's retreats and it would be an assembly line situation where it was like, I have a mission And people knew. They're like, oh, there goes Heather with her pillowcases again, you know?
Wow.
And of course I was making them for friends and other people as well. But really my mission was for my students. Yeah, it was always special. Sometimes I would give them 3 words that describes them and my journey with them. And sometimes I would tell them why. I would just say, I picked out this fabric for you because these tigers on here remind me of your fierce strength inside. And, you just like give them that personal message with it. And it connected us. And then at the end, for all of them, what I always said was, when you put your head down at night, don't you forget what it took for you to get here.
Oh my goodness. That is empowering. There's a theory, and I wish I could quote the theorist on this, but children who come from troubled homes, and I came from a challenging home for lots of reasons. People who know me know my story. But I had one teacher who told me, Jill, I will always believe in you no matter what happens to you. And there's a theory that says if a child has one person who believes in them, they will make it and they will feel loved and they will know that there is good in the world. And I just honor you so much today, Heather, for taking the time in a very difficult, I think back to 2011, 2012, we were still in the recession and life was hard and things were crazy. And life always is, I think, a little bit. But as a teacher in this area, it's hard.
It is.
And so I just want to really honor you that you took the time and presence to be that for children. I wish there were like a Dick Tracy kind of thing where we can look into the future and see all these kids and how they turn out. Because I have a feeling down the road when they are sitting on the porch with their grandchildren talking about their favorite teacher, they will say, there was this teacher when I was in high school who gave me a pillow and tell me again what you told them, Heather.
To remember all that they've accomplished.
When you put your head on this pillow, remember all that you have accomplished. And I think I'm 60 years old, Heather. I think I need to embroider that on my pillow because we forget all that we've accomplished. And when these kids come out of school strong and courageous, they will be telling their grandchildren in 50 years, this teacher I had, she was my favorite teacher. Because, we always ask our grandparents, who was your favorite teacher in school? So I'm going to take this second to shout out to my favorite teacher who told me that she would always believe in me. She's still around. I don't know where she ended up, but her name was Pam Sattler, Miss Pam Sattler. And she made a difference for me. Heather, do you have a teacher like that made a difference for you?
Oh, I think that I loved all of my teachers at the older grades that helped me embrace my love for literature. Mr. Winston Norby was my high school English teacher that gave me Henry David Thoreau's Wilde, which is technically a very dry book. But it was my first, oh my goodness, that transcendental, go to the beat of your own drum theme resonated so deeply with my junior and high school self. And I just sat there and my jaw dropped. And it did take me quite a while to realize that I could actually be an English teacher. I thought that was for people that were more put together, One
of those things we learn in life, right, is nobody's really put together. We just somehow got this image that other people were. So I am so glad you got through that and you decided to be a teacher, Heather. I'm so grateful for you for that. I would like to see if there's anything else, any other part of the story that you want to share.
When I knew I was coming on this podcast, I did a video shout out on Facebook to all my former students to send me pictures with their pillowcases. And I have gotten some. And I've gotten one from Alaska. And I've gotten one from a tiny town over way far in Wisconsin. They're out there. I figure there's probably about 400 pillowcases out there from a decade. And
That's
so,
amazing.
And so the kids, they're like, you bet I'll send a picture, and even the conversations of kiddos saying, I got you and I'll send it. It was a great moment to even do that little broadcast and just say, hey, if you have a pillowcase, I'm going to talk about it. And I'd love a picture. And to hear back was fabulous.
I'm so glad they got back to you. And we will have some of those pictures on our website. And Heather, you are personal. You worked with a small number of kids that became a large number of kids. I truly believe deep in my heart, and the whole reason for this podcast is that we are stories. It's the human condition. We define our life through stories. And so our stories do have collective impact. And I'm curious as to what you see as the collective impact of this beautiful story about pillowcases.
I think that this story just really reiterates that the meaningful things in life don't have to come with a price tag. This particular story has ripples that turn to waves of just positivity because it came from me taking the time to see the kids and offer my love and kindness. We don't know where those waves are going to go. And so really it's about the value of slowing down. What's the tiniest thing that you can do right now today to offer a little bit more beauty to the world? It doesn't have to be sewing a pillowcase, but I think we all sometimes get stuck in the loop of being busy, overwhelmed, and thinking that to make change or to make someone feel good, it needs to be a grand gesture. And it doesn't. Like the littlest things just can make change someone's life, truly.
I 100% agree. And that's how I saw it, as the smallest gift can make the difference. And I used to be at a direct sales company, and I sent out hundreds and hundreds of postcards every month to my team. And after that was no longer in my present, I still try to send out just a couple postcards a week, just to people that I think about, I care about. It takes such a short amount of time to do something like that. A couple of other things that can make a difference. We are so used to using text, right? I text, and my children all text me. The new thing is to leave a voicemail via text. You don't even call. You just send a voicemail via text. I am learning again after this post-COVID world to pick up the phone and make a phone call. We have to start reconnecting. And the fact that you have these beautiful connections out there and that they've reached back to you just makes me happy for the post-COVID world and for the world in general. And I want to know a little bit. I'm going to sit back and sip on my drink here. And I want to know a little bit about where you are in the world, because I hear you have a book coming out soon. Tell me a little bit about what you've done since that teaching time.
I, about a year ago, ended up scrolling onto something on Facebook, 5:30 in the morning, sitting next to a fire in my fireplace. And it said, "Are you supposed to write your book in 2022? And it was a local inspirational coach with someone else from over in the United Kingdom. And I just signed up without even thinking twice. I knew I had never had a dream to write a book, but I also had a lot of life events that seemed a little ridiculous. And I thought, this should be documented. And so I signed up for that in December of 2021 to start in January of 2022, 1 year ago. And it changed my life, giving myself permission to jot down that story that's inside me that needed to be released. I finished the rough draft in 5 months. And then a different calling came in, and I am someone who is fairly awake and spiritual. And I literally felt like, you know what? You are supposed to do more, be a bigger light than you are. And I literally got the impulse to leave teaching. And I loved my job. That was my dream. I didn't have to be like your aunt laying on the floor correcting papers at my job. I had acclimated to a job. I'd gotten to a job that fit me and fit my needs and provided the lifestyle. And I couldn't deny this calling to just be more, do more. And that's all I can explain it. And so I am now a solopreneur, and it's taken all this time from not returning to the classroom last September. It has been a journey. It has been scary to trust myself and that I'm worthy of not having a 9-to-5 job with a known paycheck coming. I'm a single mom. I'm a single mom without a savings account, and I believed in this mission enough to do that. So my book is going to be, actually, guess what? The test copy is showing up in my mailbox today.
Oh, how exciting. That's so exciting.
Hold it. It starts with that, but I really believe I'm here to share my journey, which isn't pretty. But I am here to say I had perseverance and I had hope and I just kept trying and I was still a light for others. That's what I chose to do. And so I want to be a speaker. I've spoken at a couple high schools. And the main thing I want to do is help other people write their story. I believe people have a chapter. Maybe they have an anthology. But people, I believe that their voice deserves to be amplified in many situations. And I can be that guide on so many levels. My new company I started as a publishing company. And so that's my calling, is to give people the space and the support they need to do whatever that calling with writing means, to entertain, to teach, to leave a legacy, to leave a story for their family, to, wherever it needs to fall. So I'm very excited about these new programs that I'm opening up. And I have another book contract already ready. And that book I can't say too much about, but it is coming out the end of May, a different one. And this one's going to be an international humanity project. It is going to be huge. And I bet we'll want to talk again.
I love stories. So that sounds wonderful. Do me a favor and tell our listeners where we can find you on social media.
Sure. So my new business is called Wilde, Wilde, House of. And so we end with the word of because we can fill in the blank with the word hope, perseverance, self-awareness, insight. And so it's wildhouseof.com. That's the best place. On Facebook, I'm Heather Wilde. And yeah, it's just a new chapter.
Well, I love that title of your website, Wild House of. For me, it would be joy. My life word is joy. So we all have our places. Those links will be on the website at thestorytellersporch.com. If you want to go look for Heather, find out more about what she's doing. I am just so honored to have you here. And I love that. I will put my head on my pillow tonight and remember that I have come this far and done great things. And I am delighted you were here. Here at the Storyteller's Porch, we believe we are the stories we share. Keep living your story and meet us next time here on the porch, and be sure to bring your favorite drink.
Thank you for joining us on the porch today. To support this podcast and help us continue to bring stories to the porch, we would be honored if you like and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Click the plus, thumbs up, heart, or follow button on whatever listening place you join us from. You can also support us by leaving a 5-star rating and a review. If you really enjoy this show, find and follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook, both at The Storyteller's Porch. If you share our post with your friends and family, that helps even more. Throughout our storytelling times, we hear real stories of courage, tragedy, rejection, triumph, joy, grief, and all the other wonderful aspects of existence that make us the unique humans that we are. We hope these stories bring us together and give us hope. We continue to learn from our stories, create with them, and connect through them. By sharing these stories, we can create community, and by creating community, we can continue to heal humanity. We can't wait to sit with you next time for another story on the porch. What drink will you bring?